Hi guys, thank you so much for joining me on another Lenawee Pet Collective interview. My name is Michelle Crandall. I'm a Tecumseh-based pet photographer photographing joyful pets. I became involved in 2022 with the city of Tecumseh and running their pet parade. They've been doing it for just about 2 decades now, and I wanted to make sure that the health and safety of participating pets was being taken seriously. I am incredibly grateful today to have the opportunity to speak with Dr. Emily Halsey. She's a licensed veterinarian here at Companion Animal Clinic right here in Tecumseh. And I just wanted to talk to you about pet safety in the heat, steps we can take to make our parade as safe as it can be, and what pet owners can do to keep their animals healthy.
I think that's a great idea. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, welcome. So let's just get right into it.
Of course.
What would you say the main heat-related risks are for pets during the summer events, especially, and what signs should people look out for?
Great question. So I'd say, especially in the hot summer months, the things you want to look out for or be concerned about is overheating or heat stroke. So a couple of things you might want to watch for with that would be excessive panting, disorientation or difficulty walking, hypersalivation or drooling more often.
Yeah.
Collapse would be another one. Checking their gum color. So if it's bright red, pale white, or blue, those are all abnormal gum colors.
Okay.
And then also potentially just kind of checking a heart rate. You can do that by just kind of feeling their chest. If it feels like it's bounding or very fast, that's also abnormal too. But when in doubt, checking a rectal temperature is also a good idea. So if it's greater than or equal to 104, that's considered pretty abnormal, and I'd say overheating at that point.
Okay.
Another good thing to consider is like paw pad burns. So with pavement or asphalt, it's going to be considerably hotter than air temperatures. So I would just kind of keep an eye on that, monitoring it. If you're seeing any swelling or discharge from the paw pads, if it looks like the first layer has been sloughed off, or if you're noticing any active bleeding or anything like that, that's abnormal. If they're limping or excessively licking at the paws, that's another potential indication. So I'd say those are the two biggest concerns that I would have with a summer pet parade.
Yeah, for sure. And these are tips that work for everyone, even those who like walk their pets down the sidewalk after work when they get home. I think that would be so painful for poor pet paws and getting burned. So I think I might have mentioned before, but I have asked the Tecumseh Fire Department to come to our parade to kind of spray down the road, because that was one of the main things that I was concerned about was paws and asphalt and July.
Yeah, it's a good concern to have.
Yeah. So in your professional opinion, how effective are precautions like that, spraying down the road and making sure we have water stations, and just kind of monitoring the air temperature?
I think those are great, precautions. I mean, it's definitely not going to hurt anything to have those things put in place.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea to consider having the fire department out and spraying the roads down periodically to try and lower the temperature.
Yeah.
However, it's important to keep in mind that, it's going to heat up again pretty quickly, so having them spraying it pretty routinely to try and cool off the road. I think that's a great idea, though, as long as they're doing it often.
Yeah, I think the parade generally lasts about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
So they're not out there, and the setup is on the grass.
Oh, perfect.
So
yeah, even better.
Good too.
Yeah.
Is there a specific temperature threshold that you think that we should abide by?
Yeah, so the air temperature differs quite drastically than the temperature of the pavement or the asphalt. So I would say if it is, over 75 to 80 degrees, then potentially considering, the pets and keep them in mind, and it might not necessarily be safe anymore to have them out and about in temperatures greater than 75 to 80 degrees, especially being out on that asphalt and that pavement, because then it's going to be well over 110 degrees probably at that point.
Yeah, and I remember from a couple of years ago, that was kind of like the number in my head was 110. As long as it's under 110, we're safe. But with the pet parade also in the morning around 10 a.m., that would be, I think, less time for it to heat up as opposed to running it at 6 p.m. or something like that.
Yep.
Okay, so that's good, 75 to 80. Is there anything that you advise pet owners to do to kind of prepare their pets for being comfortable and safe in this sort of environment?
Yeah, so like you mentioned with your water stations, I think that's a great precaution to have in place as well. So maybe having one or two in the area just for owners to stop by with their dogs if they want a quick drink, but also maybe consider bringing your own portable water, bowl or device so that if they need a quick drink to stay hydrated, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Also, just knowing kind of where the shaded areas are so that they
Mhm.
can, maybe stop, taking a break.
Yeah.
Just letting them rest and recover for a few minutes in the shade, especially if they think they're starting to get a little too hot.
Yeah.
Maybe bringing like a little portable mini fan even to
Yeah.
just kind of give them some air and cool them off as well.
Put it on me, then put it on the dog, then put it on me. We
Right.
can share it.
Yeah. But just being mindful of your pet, you know them best. So like
Yeah.
if they're starting to act abnormal, or if you think there's any signs of overheating, maybe just consider getting them, back home where they're nice and safe, checking their body temperature, things like that.
Yeah.
And then in regards to their paws, if
Mhm.
when in doubt, you can use the 7-second rule. So that's where you can put your own hand or your foot on the pavement, and if you can't hold it there for 7 seconds because it's too hot, then
Yeah.
it's too hot for your pet too. So
Yeah,
that's a
that
good thing
makes a
to
lot of
keep in
sense.
mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Consider booties, protective
Mhm.
balm on the pads as well. And then
Yeah.
I always like to say have a plan in case of an emergency.
Yeah.
So whoever you're comfortable with, like for your general practicing veterinarian, or even consider, just having a plan in place if there's an emergency situation. So knowing where your local emergency veterinary clinics are.
Yeah, that was actually something I did in a few posts before on the
Okay,
Lenawee
good.
Pet Collective, because so many of the ERs, the vet ERs, have been closing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a list there. I think the closest one is in Ann Arbor.
Yep,
Yeah.
EVH is usually where we refer to, Emergency Veterinary Hospital.
Yeah. But with all these tips, hopefully we'll catch it way before
Yes,
it gets to that point.
hopefully.
But it's good to have in the back of your mind that the
Mhm.
nearest ER vet is a good 40-minute drive away.
It is, yep.
Yeah. So kind of speaking along that line of like knowing your pet and making sure it's comfortable, are there some breeds or pets that are at higher risk during these hot temperatures?
That's a great question. I'd say really young puppies,
Okay.
they're not able to regulate their body temperatures
Oh.
appropriately like an adult dog. So I'd be a little more mindful with the puppies.
Okay.
And then like the brachiocephalic breed. So
Yeah.
brachiocephalic means like the smush face breed. So like your
Yeah.
English bulldogs, American bulldogs, French bulldogs, pugs, pets down that line.
If their nose is shorter than yours, they shouldn't be out there.
Yes, they have, their airway is conformed a little differently than, like your golden retriever and your lab.
Yeah.
So they already have a harder time breathing just normally as it is. So those hotter temperatures could put them at increased risk for overheating and respiratory distress.
Yeah.
So I would just be cautious with that.
Yeah.
The
Pay
third
special
thing I'd say
attention.
is like Arctic breeds. So like your Huskies, your Malamutes, they're going to have thicker, more winter-like dense coats. So it's harder for them to dissipate heat.
Oh, okay. It's not that it's thicker and so it keeps the heat out. It actually absorbs the heat even more on those big guys.
Yep.
Good to know.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Well, so you already mentioned it kind of earlier about if your pet starts to show some overheating signs during the event, head straight to the ER. And that was really my last question was, like even as I'm observing, as then the people around us are all observing our dogs, because that's what we want is a safe, healthy pet event. Just kind of, it sounds like panting a lot. Maybe if their gums start to get a little different colored than they normally are, obviously collapse, then we'd probably be carrying them down here.
Yeah.
So those were pretty much the big ones to keep in mind, right? Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, do you have any other advice that you'd like to share? Anything else?
Yeah. So I think like one other thing, if you are concerned that your pet's overheating at the pet parade, some tips or tricks to maybe do to try and cool them down effectively and appropriately is to get them to a cooler area right away. So immediately remove them from the hot outside summer day. Get them into an area that's well ventilated, cool, shaded if possible. If they're bright and alert and responsive, maybe give them a little bit of cool water, but not freezing cold. We don't want to shock their system.
Okay.
Potentially putting some water on like the paw pads to try and help dissipate heat. The armpits, the groin, but again, not freezing cold water because we don't want to shock their system.
Okay.
Using a fan to help with like evaporative cooling.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, if you're extremely concerned about heat stroke, I would take a rectal temperature. If it's above or at 104, then that's an emergency situation. So I'd definitely say consider going to the emergency at that point. Okay.
All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm thinking about where the pet parade is usually located, and it's right, near like the Martins, the corner, kind of right where you guys are. I bet that they would even let us bring in a dog who was having trouble and put on their cool, like tile, air conditioned floor. That would probably be a really good start. So, yeah, always things that we can do.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was great. I really, really do appreciate you coming on with me.
Of course. I'm happy to help.
Yeah. So thank you so much again for joining me on the Runaway Pet Collective, and we'll see you next time.